On the occasion of International Women's Day, we are proud to feature an exclusive conversation with Ms. Nandini Khaitan, a leading disputes lawyer and a partner at Khaitan and Company. Recognized among the Economic Times 40 Under 40 Business Leaders of India, Ms. Khaitan has established herself as a prominent voice in the field of commercial litigation and arbitration. Over the years, her work has reflected not only excellence in adversarial practice, but also thoughtful engagement with broader questions of equality, constitutional values, and social progress, including advocacy around gender equity and LGBTQIA rights. This conversation will be conducted by Arya Sheel, a student ambassador for SCC Online and is law student at Faculty of Law, Banaras Hindu University, who actively engages in academic and professional initiatives aimed at fostering dialogue within the legal community. Arya, over to you.
Ma'am, could you please begin by introducing yourself to the audience and by shedding some light upon the journey that you have and why you chose this specific profession?
Hi, namaste. Hi, everyone. Happy International Women's Day to everybody. My name is Nandini Khaitan. I'm a lawyer with Khaitan and Company. I've been a lawyer now for 21 years of my life, but I think I've been with the profession almost all my life. I started my career with the Bombay office, well, technically Calcutta, but with the Bombay office in 2001. I was in the Bombay office of Khaitan till about 2010. Then I went off for my master's to the US, and then I returned, and I've been with the Calcutta office of the firm for the last 14 odd years. I practice dispute resolution, and my practice takes me to courts in all over the country, be it the Supreme Court, the NCLAT, district courts in Maharashtra, West Bengal, Tamil Nadu. So it's a pretty expansive space to practice in. The reason why I joined the profession, well, I was lucky, I would say. I was surrounded by family who were in the profession from a very early age. My grandfather, who I was the favorite grandchild of, I would have to say, and I kind of hero worshipped him. My father, my uncles, my great grandfathers, all were in the profession. So I always wondered early on as a child that where is this place that they are all going to with their black jackets in the morning? So I always wanted to go to the same place, being my grandfather's pet, and that's how I always thought that that's what I want to be, and that's where I want to go, and that's how the journey started very early on, I would say.
Ma'am, it is indeed commendable that you have been recognized as the Economic Times 40 Under 40 Leaders of India. Ma'am, is there any particular experience that you would like to share to reflect upon your leadership philosophy?
Well, any recognition or any milestone is first and foremost always a recognition of the help, the mentoring, and the assistance that you've got from everybody around you. So it's really a recognition of that more than any particular individual, because any profession, law definitely, but any profession, and definitely my journey has definitely been whatever it has been because of the brilliant mentorship I've received from many seniors, the teamwork that I've received from my peers and colleagues and juniors. You're as good as your weakest link. So thing that I always say is a good leader is a person who's a good team worker. That's the most important thing. If you have a good idea but it's not executed well, you'll have a tough day in court. If you've executed well but without thought to what law applies or to what case laws apply, it will obviously again be a tough day in court. So every little thing matters, and the most important thing is to take ownership of whatever role you're given. No role is small, or every single role matters. When you receive a letter, a notice, and if you cut off the person receiving it in the dispatch, if he cuts off the receipt sign, it'll have implications even there. So right from something as simple as receiving the notice correctly and responding to it to actually making the arguments in court, it's an entire chain, and each link is important. So I think teamwork is the most important philosophy in any manner, leadership or otherwise.
So, ma'am, you have been in a multiplicity of discussions regarding the status of women in law. Ma'am, how would you like to describe their current position in the corporate offices and litigation? And, ma'am, how would you trace their position from over the years?
So I think there's definitely been an uptake on the number of women studying law. In 2016, I think there were more women studying law in Harvard than men. By 2018 or later, women were equaling the number of men in the national law schools in India. I definitely see more women interns these days and a lot more women in court. When I started my practice and I used to go to court, I used to be one of the few women that I used to see who I could discuss the loose situation with. And but now I think women are everywhere. It's a very, very strong choice for women to study and become lawyers. I think it was always a great profession, but now when women are coming into the work field, they are actively choosing law as one of their top three sort of professions or businesses to kind of veer towards. And as for where I see women going, see, earlier there were very few women in the profession. So the number of women that actually made it to the top to management of senior positions, senior advocates were very few because there were not that many people who went all the way. Women got married, had kids, and they would keep dropping off the ladder. So very few made it to the top positions and the senior positions. With more and more women coming into the profession, there will be a lot more people staying the course and climbing the entire ladder. So what I see happening is there will be a level playing field in the new fields of law where women and men both are starting off together, and women getting more management positions, taking up more senior positions in the future because there are that many people working in the field now.
Ma'am, holding that thought, ma'am, what infrastructural shifts do you believe are needed to create a more equitable legal society?
Yeah, so see, when I started attending court in 2004, and the sanitation situation was pretty dismal out back then. It's still not the best, but it's a lot better. I think in early 1900s, I don't remember the exact date right now. Regina Guha was prevented from getting a pleader's license, a lawyer's license, and now we are on track to become having our first woman chief justice of India. So I think it's a slow change, but it's on track. Sanitation is the most important infrastructural change that I think women require. Access to clean bathrooms, changing spaces, and women who attend court as an independent counsel, who argue in court and not part of any law firm infrastructure, for them it's very important that courts have clean bathrooms and there are creches in court, because if that kind of infrastructure comes in, there'll be a lot more women who are able to manage the court hours along with their their home and personal chores. I do think that with more and more women coming in, it's just a matter of time that these changes take place. In fact, just a few years back, I was requested to do a study on one of the high courts of on the situation of the women's law in the high courts, and we had done a report on it, and changes were actually made basis that. So it's just a matter of time. Yes, it's a little slow, but it is happening.
Ma'am, there are no doubt a lot of underprivileged women in this legal field who just don't have the right set of resources to excel in this particular field. Ma'am, do you have any experience of working on such a cause? And if not, ma'am, how would you want to help in this cause if the opportunity ever presents itself?
Well, I think the scope for the underprivileged to kind of access the fields of education and law is tremendous, given the amount of people who are still, in the underprivileged sort of census area. But there are a lot of NGOs that are working. I have been working with IDIA for the last, I think, 10 to 15 years now. IDIA is increasing diversity by increasing access, which basically sensitizes people, children, school-going students in, on the study of law. If then we pick up their training and the fees for the law school if they crack the entrance examinations. And there are so many women students who have benefited from the IDIA program, and I'm sure many are doing similar programs like these. And I remember there's one student who came from the quarries of Karnataka, and she was picked up for training, and then she cracked the entrance exam, studied at NUJS or one of the national law schools, got picked up by a top law firm. I mean, that's really a brilliant and a very empowering journey, and that keeps students everywhere inspired that yes, if she can make it, so can we. So I think the important thing to do is to look for opportunities where you can make a difference. IDIA is one such very, very sort of empowering and very consistent NGO that I work with, and I'm sure there are many more that one can be on the lookout for.
Right, ma'am. Ma'am, you have been actively engaged in the LGBTQIA rights. Ma'am, is that something, fighting for their rights, is it something that you feel very passionately about?
This is a very interesting question, because when the firm asked me to, I work with Khaitan and Company. When the firm asked me to work on this initiative, I was a little surprised as to how, or I was a little concerned as to how I would, work with the initiative, because I did not work. I was not from the community. I did not have any friends that were from the community. And but then one day, somebody asked me, Ki, why are you working on the community? And I was so taken aback. I was like, why? I can be concerned on how I can contribute, but why should I be asked that why are you working on this? And surprisingly, I have been asked this question multiple times, that are you from the community that you're working on this? And ultimately, I got so sort of tired of being asked this question. I started saying, yes, I'm from the same community. It's called humanity, because you don't need to be from the same space to be an ally, to feel empathy, to try and champion the cause. Any cause that one champions, whether it's LGBTQ or like the men who support diversity, right? Why are they supporting it? It's a cause for them, right? It's just about trying to be an ally for a cause that you think deserves some sort of upliftment, some sort of access and empowering. So yes, so when I started working on this initiative for the firm, we came out with a compendium, a first of its kind compendium on the rights for LGBTQIA plus the community of India. Well, the laws stated here are for the Indian community, and I think it was more of a learning experience for me and the colleagues who worked on the compendium more than anything else. We learned so much in the year that we took to make the compendium, and once the compendium came out, there was a gay couple who came and told us that 377 had been read down, but obviously there was very little sensitization around it, and they were being harassed by some people. And there was threats of being put behind bars. And then they took the compendium and showed how 377 had been read down, and they were stopped from being harassed after that. And I think that makes one feel that there is some tangible impact with that, and so it makes you even more sort of passionate is the word you used. I think it makes you even more passionate about flying the flag and taking it further. It didn't start as a passion project. I wasn't even sure I would do justice to the cause. But over the years of working with it, I think it really is something close to my heart now.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your experience. Ma'am, similar to this cause, you have been also a part of certain other social justice causes, be it sexual harassment or surrogacy laws. Ma'am, how do you think successful women lawyers such as yourself can build a way or play a role in shaping constitutional values in the system?
When you mention constitutional values, the first thing that comes to me is freedom and equality. And I go back to the same point. Education is the foundation of every single constitutional right that one can have. If you don't know your rights, you can't exercise them, and knowing your rights can only happen if you have education. So I think being educated, promoting education, making sure people around you get educated is the single most important step towards living your constitution and with their with its rights.
Ma'am, you are an avid reader. Ma'am, would you like to suggest some literature to our audience which might help them think or lead the way that you do?
Okay, so I love reading. I always have a book with me. Firstly, read for fun. That's most important. I think people underestimate the importance of fun in our lives. Please read for fun. But there is a massive amount of benefit to reading apart from just fun. Firstly, I think I would suggest read fiction, which people think is just for time pass or as a hobby. But I think reading fiction is the single most important thing you can do for exercising your brain. So what happens is when you read fiction, you have to imagine. Imagination is directly linked to your cognitive abilities, and cognitive abilities is directly linked to your ability to make creative decisions. Law is thinking creatively for a large parts of it, right? So, now for any business, any profession for that matter, the ability to think outside the box. So, when you read fiction, your mind imagines. So that's a massive benefit. It's like exercise for your brain. So everybody should read without fail and read fiction. It's very, very important. Another reason why I suggest reading is because it's an empathy builder. When you read fiction, so you step into the shoes of the characters that you're reading about. So I read this book called Nectar in a Sieve. It's about a farmer couple set in the 50s, I think. And I had never really, interacted with farmers before on a one-to-one. We hear stories about the problems that farmers go through, but I had never really sort of, identified with it. And once I read the book and I went through the life of the farmer, through the journey in the book, I think the kind of pain that I felt when I would hear stories with farmers, problems, and the amount I got involved with, helping with farmer initiatives happened only after the book. And that's because fiction really builds empathy. So apart from all the benefits in the world, I think if you want to be a better human, reading fiction is definitely a way to do it. So I suggest reading to everybody. One of the best novels that has come out from India is a book called Those Days. It's a translation actually, but the author worked on the translation, so not much is lost, I must say. At least I hope so. It's by Sunil Gangopadhyay. He won the Sahitya Kala Academy for it. It's set in the early Renaissance of Bengal, 1830 to about 1870. I can promise you, I have never been so grateful for my education as I was when I read the book, because at that point, women weren't allowed to study. There was Widow remarriage was an issue. There was casteist issues. A doctor of a lower caste was allowed to touch you because a doctor's lower caste wouldn't affect you. And I couldn't even identify what was being stated because I don't see these things, at least in my vicinity anymore. I'm sure it's still there. But the kind of narrative that was there around the piece on women's education and how certain historical characters uplifted women's education, and I a lot of us take it for granted. So it makes you grateful for the history, for the struggle that people have gone through to get where I am, and it makes you even more impassioned, if I can say, take that word, to make sure that others around us are educated. It's sort of a responsibility, I feel.
Ma'am, what are the women inside or outside of law that have inspired you the most?
Many. I think different women have different roles that are played. My aunt Ananya, my Masi, she's one of the most gracious lady. She has strength under fire. Whenever anybody has a problem, they'll go to her, and whatever may be the problem, I mean, she will come up with a calm solution for it. And I think that's fundamental to being a strong person, to be able to deal with problems with a calm mind. I think that's something that we need to know how to deal with. And I think in the profession of law, Zia Modi is an absolute sort of icon that we all sort of relate to. So there have been many women across, and I'm naming two because they are the ones who are coming to my mind. But there have been many along the way, I'm sure. And for me, actually, my mentor, Mr. Chakrapani Mishra, it's Women's Day, I know, but I have to mention him because he single-handedly pushed me to do my best every single day. I don't think there's a bigger champion for me, at least in this profession, than him, because he would constantly say that you can be as strong as you want to be. He would, allow me the flexibility that was needed on certain days. He would, tell me to go and brief the senior counsels on my own at a very young age. There was no hesitation that, oh, she's a girl and she can't do what we can. And he was excellent. So I think there are a lot of mentors who help us along the way.
Right, ma'am. Ma'am, as your departing words, what advice would you like to give to our audience? Ma'am, especially women who seek to go further in this occupation. And ma'am, what are some habits that you would recommend they inculcate?
First thing I think is don't take things personally. That's something which is very important. We take so many things very personally. I think society is still changing. Like it's not. I don't think. If somebody says something, it's not really reflective on the person. It's more a reflection on the society you're a part of. So just kind of take it in your stride and move ahead. Don't let it kind of pull you back on things. So not taking things personally is a very big factor, I think, for women lawyers. Two, I think consistency. People expect us to fall off the ladder pretty early on. Take sabbaticals if needed, take breaks if needed, but keep at it as. And actually, when you mentioned which are the women icons of, sort of people who sort of inspired, I think another name that comes to mind now is Madhuri Diwan. She's somebody who's had 2 kids. She's a senior advocate, and I think she balances. I feel she balances her life with law and her personal life beautifully. And the one thing she always said is that you just have to keep working at it consistently. And I've taken those words very strongly, and I try to emulate that.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such an enriching discussion. I'm through with my questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am, for generously taking out the time to share your journey, your experiences, and your thoughtful perspectives with us. It's been a privilege to hear your reflections on leadership, the role of women, the changing infrastructure, like the responsibility of lawyers to shape and make this profession more inclusive and equitable. So on the occasion of Women's Day, I hope this conversation inspires many young lawyers,
I hope so.
especially women, but men, women, everyone, to pursue this profession with confidence, conviction, and a sense of purpose. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me today, and happy International Women's Day to everybody.
Happy International Women's Day.
Happy International